Hey guys, tonight we're settling in for a truly delightful journey, one that promises to lull you into a deep, restful sleep. Imagine, if you will, the gentle creak of old timbers, the distant hoot of an owl, and the faint, earthy scent of, well, medieval life. We're stepping back in time, all the way to a grand castle perched majestically on a hill, its stone walls standing stoic against the elements. You can almost feel the chill dampness seeping from the ancient masonry, can't you? The flickering torchlight casts long, dancing shadows across the rough-hewn stone, and somewhere, a stable boy snores softly, perhaps dreaming of a simpler, less odorous existence. Because tonight, dear friends, we're delving into a topic often overlooked in the romanticized tales of knights and ladies: how medieval castles dealt with their rubbish. And let me tell you, if you think your recycling bin is a hassle, you probably wouldn't last a day as a medieval scullery maid. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you prepare to drift off, why not let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you? It's always fascinating to see how far our little history nooks reach. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. We begin our leisurely stroll through the medieval castle, not in the grand hall, nor in the ladies' solar, but just outside the imposing walls, where a particularly fragrant feature often greeted visitors before they even crossed the drawbridge: the moat. Now, when you picture a moat, you probably envision sparkling clear water, perhaps swans gliding serenely across its surface, a picturesque watery defense. A lovely thought, isn't it? Well, gently cast that image aside, because the reality of a medieval moat was often quite different. Far from being a pristine aquatic barrier, the moat frequently served a dual purpose, and one of those purposes involved being a rather convenient, albeit pungent, receptacle for the castle's less desirable discards. Imagine yourself approaching the castle, perhaps on a warm summer's day, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and something vaguely ... organic. You might wrinkle your nose slightly, wondering if there's a particularly enthusiastic manure heap nearby. But no, my sleepy friend, that particular aroma is likely wafting from the very waters meant to deter invaders. You see, for many castles, especially those not strategically placed near a swiftly flowing river, the moat became a catchment area for all manner of refuse. It wasn't always a deliberate design feature, mind you, but more of a practical inevitability. Think of the castle as a bustling, self-contained community. People lived, ate, worked, and yes, produced waste within its confines. And where did much of that waste go? Often it found its way, by hook or by crook, into the moat. This could include kitchen slops, the less appealing bits of butchered animals, and even, at times, human waste from rudimentary latrines that might empty directly into the water. Yes, that's right. A medieval castle moat could be, in essence, a very large, very slow-moving open sewer. You certainly wouldn't want to fall in, unless you had a very particular affinity for a rather robust bacterial bath. This wasn't always the case, of course. Some moats were indeed fed by fresh springs or rivers, ensuring a constant flow of water that helped to dilute and carry a waste, making them much less aromatic. But in many instances, particularly in drier regions or for castles built without such natural water sources, the moat could become a stagnant, malodorous cesspool. Historians still argue whether the primary defensive function of a moat was its watery depth or simply the sheer disgust it inspired in potential attackers. One might imagine an invading army pausing at the brink, taking a collective sniff and deciding, perhaps we'll try another castle. This one smells a bit ... lived in. It's a quirky tidbit, isn't it? The idea that a castle's best defense wasn't just its thick walls, but its formidable stench. It's the kind of subtle sensory deterrent that often gets overlooked in the heroic tales. You're probably picturing it now, aren't you? A knight gleaming in his armor, his trusty steed snorting nervously, not at the sight of archers, but at the overpowering bouquet rising from the murky depths below. Truly, the unsung hero of medieval defense, the forgotten art of strategic stink. From the fragrant, or perhaps less fragrant, embrace of the moat, we now venture deeper into the castle's interior, where another pervasive challenge to medieval hygiene awaited, the humble, yet undeniably crucial, privy, or, as it was more elegantly known, the garderobe. Now, you might be imagining something akin to a modern bathroom, perhaps a quaint, stone-lined chamber with a wooden seat. And in some grander castles, you wouldn't be entirely wrong about the chamber part. But the flushing mechanism, as it were, was often a marvel of medieval engineering, or, more accurately, a direct and sometimes rather dramatic drop. The most common design for a garderobe was a simple shaft, built into the thickness of the castle wall, that emptied directly downwards. Where did it empty, you ask, with a polite, sleepy curiosity? Well, if you were lucky, it emptied into the moat, which, as we've gently discussed, already had a certain ... character. If you were less lucky, or if the castle's design didn't permit a direct moat connection, it might empty into a cesspit at the base of the wall. Or, in some truly unfortunate instances, simply onto the slope of the castle mound, leaving a rather unsightly and undeniably aromatic stain. Imagine the sheer convenience of simply letting gravity do all the work. No plumbing bills, no clogged pipes, just a swift, undignified descent. It certainly offered a sense of finality to the whole process. The seat itself would typically be a wooden plank with a hole, often surprisingly comfortable by medieval standards. You'd sit there, perhaps contemplating the strategic importance of the castle, or perhaps just musing on the swift passage of time and other things. The fresh air, or rather the less stale air, would waft up from below, providing a constant, if somewhat bracing, reminder of the garderobe's function. And let's not forget the simple, ingenious ventilation provided by the open shaft itself, perhaps leading to a breezy, if not entirely pleasant, draft. It was, in its own way, a testament to medieval pragmatism. Why complicate matters with elaborate systems when a hole in the wall and a clear drop would suffice? This primitive system, while effective in its simplicity, did present its own set of challenges. Cesspits, when used, needed to be periodically emptied, a task that was undoubtedly one of the least enviable jobs in the castle. Imagine, if you will, the night soil men, as they might be called, with their buckets and shovels, working under the cover of darkness, perhaps grumbling about the latest feast and its inevitable consequences. It truly puts our modern sanitation systems into perspective, doesn't it? One can almost hear the soft, squishy sounds of their work echoing through the quiet medieval night. Historians still argue whether the frequency of cesspit emptying was dictated by smell or by overflow. I lean towards overflow. Medieval noses were, I suspect, considerably more resilient than ours. Beyond the purely practical, there were also some curious beliefs surrounding these waste disposal methods. Some folk remedies even suggested that the vapors rising from a cesspit could have medicinal properties, though I strongly advise against attempting to test that particular theory at home. It's a quirky tidbit, isn't it? The idea that something so inherently unpleasant could be thought to possess healing powers. It speaks to a time when medical knowledge was more akin to educated guesswork, and every pungent odor might hold a secret. So, as you drift off, perhaps consider the unglamorous, yet absolutely vital, role of the garderobe in the daily life of a medieval castle. It kept things, literally, moving along, ensuring that even the highest lord or lady had a private moment with gravity. Just try not to imagine too vividly what might have been clinging to the underside of those castle walls. Sweet dreams. Having gently navigated the less than pristine waters of the moat, and contemplated the pragmatic efficiency of the garderobe. Let's now shift our sleepy gaze to the heart of daily life within the castle walls, the kitchen. Ah, the medieval kitchen. A bustling, smoky, often chaotic place, brimming with the sounds of chopping, bubbling, and the general cacophony of meal preparation. But beyond the savory aromas of roasting meats and simmering pottage, the kitchen was also a prolific generator of a different kind of output: food waste. Imagine, if you will, a busy castle kitchen preparing a feast. You'd have scullery maids peeling what felt like mountains of root vegetables, carrots, parsnips, turnips, their discarded skins piling up in damp, earthy heaps. Butchers would be at work, carving immense cuts of meat, leaving behind a substantial amount of bone, gristle, and less desirable offal. There were fish scales from countless catches, the inedible husks of grains, and the forgotten crumbs from freshly baked bread. This wasn't just a small kitchen in a cozy cottage. A castle might house hundreds of people, from the lord and lady to knights, squires, servants, and soldiers. Every meal, every day, generated a truly impressive volume of organic refuse. So, what became of these mountains of medieval kitchen scraps? Well, much like today, animals played a crucial role in the waste management system. Pigs, in particular, were the undisputed kings of medieval recycling. You might hear their contented grunts emanating from the castle's pigsty, a sound that, in its own way, was a testament to efficient waste disposal. Almost anything edible, or even semi-edible, would find its way into the pigs' troughs. Leftover porridge, vegetable peelings, stale bread, even the occasional half-eaten trencherman. It all went to the pigs. They were, in essence, the castle's living garbage disposals, turning what would otherwise be rotting waste into valuable meat. It's quite remarkable, isn't it? The sheer practicality of medieval life, where every scrap had a potential second life. You could almost picture a kitchen servant, apron smeared with various culinary detritus, whistling a jaunty tune as they heave a bucket of scraps towards the hungry oinkers. Beyond the pigs, other animals, like dogs, would also scavenge for scraps. And some waste, particularly bones that were too large or tough for the pigs, might be collected and later used for various purposes, such as making bone meal for fertilizer, or even carved into useful tools or decorative items. The idea of waste, as we understand it, as something utterly without value, was less prevalent in a time when resources were precious and every item had a potential further use. This constant repurposing speaks volumes about the ingenuity and necessity of thrift in medieval society. Of course, not everything could be fed to animals or repurposed. Some softer organic waste, like the sodden remains of expired vegetables, might simply be tossed into the designated midden heap, which we'll explore more thoroughly in a moment. But the sheer volume of organic matter, especially during times of feasting, presented a continuous challenge. Historians still debate whether the persistent low-level hum of flies was more annoying or simply accepted as background noise in a medieval castle kitchen. It's a quirky tidbit, isn't it? The sheer insectal presence that must have been a constant companion to medieval cooks. You might be imagining the buzzing now, a gentle, hypnotic sound to carry you off to sleep. Just don't let it inspire any midnight snack cravings for medieval offal. Having explored the bustling, often fragrant, realm of the castle kitchen and its delightful pig-powered waste disposal, let us now turn our attention to another persistent byproduct of medieval life: ash, soot, and the lingering threat of fire. Imagine yourself wrapped in a thick wool blanket by a roaring fire in the castle's great hall. The crackling flames provide warmth and light, chasing away the encroaching chill and darkness. A truly comforting scene, isn't it? But with every comforting flicker of flame came the inevitable residue. The fine, gray ash settling on every surface, and the oily black soot clinging to the rough stone of the chimney. Fireplaces were not a luxury in a medieval castle. They were an absolute necessity. Used for heating, cooking, and light, Fires burned constantly, day and night, throughout much of the year. This meant a continuous production of ash from the burned wood and charcoal. While ash might seem innocuous, a gentle gray powder, in quantity, it presented a significant disposal challenge. You could almost hear the soft whisper of the wind carrying fine ash particles through the air, perhaps making your eyes feel a little gritty even now. So, how did they deal with this pervasive gray dust? Much of the ash from hearths and kitchens would be simply scooped up and often added to the burgeoning midden heap outside the castle walls, which we'll soon visit. However, ash also had its uses. It was a surprisingly versatile substance. For instance, wood ash was a crucial component in making lye, a strong alkaline solution used for washing clothes and for making soap. Imagine the castle laundresses, their hands stained with lye, scrubbing away at grubby tunics, their work made possible by the very fires that heated their homes. This gentle repurposing of waste into a cleaning agent is a testament to the practical, no-nonsense approach of medieval household management. It's a quirky tidbit, isn't it? The humble ash, a silent workhorse of medieval cleanliness. Beyond ash, there was the more insidious problem of soot. Soot, a greasy, carbonaceous residue, formed in chimneys and flues. While not as voluminous as ash, it was a constant fire hazard. Imagine the narrow, winding passages of the castle chimneys, gradually accumulating layers of flammable soot. A stray spark, a particularly hot fire, and suddenly you have a chimney fire, a terrifying prospect in a wooden-beamed castle. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience. A chimney fire could quickly engulf an entire wing, threatening the lives of everyone within. Therefore, chimney sweeping was a vital, if dangerous and dirty, profession. Though perhaps not as formalized as in later centuries, someone, likely a nimble servant or a specialized laborer, would have the unenviable task of climbing into those narrow flues, scraping away the clinging soot. Historians still argue whether medieval chimney sweeps had any specialized tools beyond brushes and determination, or if it was mostly a matter of sheer grit and a good head for heights. You might picture them, emerging from the sooty darkness, looking more like ghosts than people, covered head to toe in black. The air inside the castle, especially around the fireplaces, would always carry that faint, smoky scent, a constant reminder of the warmth, but also of the ever-present threat of accidental combustion. So, as you drift off to sleep, perhaps appreciate the comforting lack of soot clinging to your walls, and the distant, pleasant scent of nothing much at all. From the smoky interior, thick with the scent of wood smoke and the faint promise of accidental fire, we now step outside the castle walls, or perhaps just beyond the immediate perimeter, to confront the rather less romantic, but absolutely vital, reality of the midden heap. This, my sleepy friend, was the medieval equivalent of the municipal landfill, but with far less municipal oversight and significantly more natural integration. Imagine a designated spot, perhaps just downwind from the main living quarters, a thoughtful design choice, indeed, where all the castle's general refuse was simply piled. We've discussed the kitchen scraps, the bones, the vegetable peelings, and the ash from the fires. Now, add to that the straw from animal bedding, discarded broken pottery, bits of worn-out leather, fragments of cloth, the occasional defunct tool, and perhaps even some of the less than pleasant contents from the cesspits if they weren't conveniently emptying into the moat. The midden heap was a multi-layered, ever-growing testament to the daily accumulation of life in a medieval fortress. You could almost feel the gentle crunch of discarded refuse underfoot, a soft, unsettling symphony of forgotten objects. These heaps weren't just unsightly. They were teeming with life. Flies, attracted by the organic decay, would buzz in thick clouds, and rats and other vermin would thrive, finding a constant buffet and comfortable nesting grounds. It's a quirky tidbit, isn't it? The humble rat, a constant, uninvited guest, playing its part in the ecosystem of medieval waste. While certainly a nuisance and a vector for disease, these creatures were an undeniable part of the midden landscape. One might wonder if the castle cats and dogs had an endless supply of entertainment patrolling these aromatic mountains. The sheer scale of these midden heaps could be impressive, growing over years and even centuries into significant mounds. Archaeological excavations of castle sites often reveal these dump heaps as treasure troves of information, providing historians with invaluable insights into the daily lives, diets, and material culture of medieval inhabitants. What seems like mere trash to us today offers a surprisingly clear window into their world. You might find a fragment of a decorated comb, a broken piece of a ceramic jug, or even the remnants of a child's toy, all discarded and slowly consumed by the earth. Of course, the presence of these burgeoning piles of refuse presented obvious challenges. The smell, as you might imagine, could be quite formidable, especially on a warm, still day. And while some level of odor was likely simply accepted as a part of medieval life, there must have been days when even the hardiest castle dweller wished for a swift breeze from a different direction. Historians still argue whether specific rituals or superstitions were commonly associated with the midden, or if it was simply treated as a necessary evil. Regardless, the midden heap was a constant, if unglamorous, feature of the castle's external landscape, a visible and olfactory reminder of the daily grind. It was a place where things went to slowly decompose, to return to the earth, a gentle, inevitable cycle of decay and renewal. Try not to imagine too vividly the things that might have wriggled within its depths as you slowly drift off. As we serenely float over the aromatic landscape of the midden heap, it's only natural to wonder who, in this meticulously structured medieval world, was actually responsible for handling all this castle gunk? Because while the lord and lady might preside over feasts and battles, they certainly weren't mucking out the pigsty or emptying the garderobes themselves. This brings us to the fascinating, if somewhat unglamorous, waste management hierarchy of the medieval castle. Imagine the castle as a miniature society, with everyone having their assigned place and duties. At the very top, you have the nobility, whose primary concern with waste was likely its general absence from their immediate vicinity, or perhaps the timely removal of any unpleasantries. Below them, a layer of more senior household staff, like the steward or the chamberlain, would be responsible for overseeing the overall running of the castle, which naturally included ensuring the various refuse systems were theoretically functioning. But the actual hands-on work, my sleepy friend, fell to the less visible, but utterly indispensable, members of the castle's bustling staff. The vast majority of the daily waste handling would fall to the lower-ranking servants. Think of the scullery maids, perpetually elbow-deep in kitchen slops and washing greasy pots. Their task wasn't just cooking. It was also managing the immediate disposal of organic waste, often directly to the waiting pigs or the designated refuse pits. Then there were the grooms and stable hands, who dealt with the considerable amount of animal waste produced by horses, oxen, and other livestock. Their daily routine involved mucking out stables, a task that, while odorous, was also vital for the health of the animals and the general cleanliness of the castle grounds. You can almost hear the rhythmic scraping of their shovels, a gentle, hypnotic sound against the backdrop of a medieval morning. For the more intimate refuse, the role often fell to specialized laborers, or sometimes, as we mentioned earlier, the unfortunate night soil men. These individuals performed one of the most physically unpleasant, yet socially critical, jobs in the castle. Their work ensured that the castle remained, to a degree, habitable. The social implications of such work were clear. It was low status, dirty, and often relegated to the lowest rungs of the social ladder. Yet without them, the medieval castle would quickly become an unbearable place to live. It's a quirky tidbit, isn't it? The sheer dependence of medieval grandeur on the diligent, unsung efforts of those who dealt with the dirtiest aspects of daily life. Historians still argue whether the perceived cleanliness of a medieval castle was more about outward appearance for visitors or genuine internal hygiene. It's a tricky question, given the limited tools and understanding of sanitation at the time. However, the continuous effort, even if rudimentary by modern standards, to manage waste speaks to a certain pragmatic desire for order. You see, even in a time without germ theory or municipal waste collection, people understood that large piles of rotting refuse and stagnant human waste were unpleasant, attracted pests, and contributed to general ill health. So, while the systems were basic, the intent was often present. As you gently drift off, consider the unseen hands that kept the medieval world from truly drowning in its own detritus, allowing the lords and ladies to dream their own dreams, perhaps blissfully unaware of the busy work happening just beyond their perfumed chambers. We've journeyed through the odorous moats, the efficient if a bit too direct garderobes, the bustling kitchens, and the omnipresent ash. We've even acknowledged the tireless, often unappreciated, workers who kept the medieval castle from becoming an entirely uninhabitable mess. Now, as our gentle historical journey approaches its soothing conclusion, let's explore a truly fascinating aspect of medieval waste management: the surprisingly resourceful ways medieval folk engaged in what we might call medieval recycling efforts. You see, the concept of waste, in the modern sense, as something disposable and without value, was a much rarer notion in the medieval period. Resources were precious, labor was costly, and innovation often sprang from necessity. So, while we might picture overflowing garbage heaps, much of what we'd consider trash today was carefully, even ingeniously, repurposed. Take, for instance, those animal bones we encountered earlier in the kitchen. While some went to the pigs, the larger, sturdier bones were far from useless. They could be boiled down to extract marrow for food or fat for candles and lubricants. The remaining bone material itself could then be ground into bone meal, a highly effective fertilizer for the castle gardens, enriching the soil for future crops. This wasn't just about being thrifty. It was a fundamental part of sustainable living in a pre-industrial age. Imagine the faint, earthy smell of bone meal being worked into the soil, a quiet testament to a circular economy. Then there was the constant accumulation of textile scraps. Clothes wore out, tapestries frayed, and blankets became too thin. But these weren't simply thrown away. Smaller pieces of cloth could be repurposed as cleaning rags, bandages, or even patched together to create new, albeit perhaps less fashionable, garments for servants. Even seemingly useless fabric could be shredded and used as stuffing for mattresses or cushions. This meticulous reuse extended to leather as well. Old shoes or worn-out belts might be cut down to repair other leather items or used for smaller, simpler bindings. It's a quirky tidbit, isn't it? The sheer amount of mending and repurposing that went into every single item, extending its life far beyond what we might expect today. Even seemingly mundane items, like wooden offcuts from carpentry or the staves from broken barrels, found new life. They could be used as kindling for fires, reinforcing small structures, or even carved into simple tools or toys. Historians still argue whether the widespread practice of gleaning, collecting leftover scraps after a harvest, or finding discarded items, was more an act of desperate survival or an ingrained cultural habit of maximizing every resource. Perhaps it was a bit of both, a gentle reminder that nothing truly went to waste if it could serve another purpose. This resourceful mindset even applied to construction waste. When new buildings were erected or old ones renovated, the discarded stone rubble wasn't always just dumped. It could be used as infill for foundations, crushed for paths, or repurposed for smaller, less structurally critical walls. The medieval world, in its own quiet way, was a master of efficiency born from constraint. You might imagine the soft clink of stone against stone as discarded pieces found their new, unglamorous, but utterly essential place. So, as the sounds of medieval life begin to fade, and the castle settles into its nighttime quiet, picture the gentle hum of this continuous cycle. The scraps becoming feed, the bones becoming fertilizer, the worn fabric becoming new comfort. It's a testament to a time when every single item had a story, and even at the end of its first life, it was often given another chance to contribute. There's a quiet beauty in that, isn't there? A soft, contented sigh for a world that knew how to make the most of what it had. Now, as the last echoes of our medieval journey gently recede, feel the weight of your own eyelids, growing heavier with each passing moment. The distant sounds of the castle, the gentle rustle of straw, the soft hoot of an owl, all blend into a comforting hush. Let the details of ancient garbage, of inventive recycling, simply dissolve into the quiet dark. Your mind, having wandered through history's forgotten corners, is now ready for deep, undisturbed rest. Allow your breathing to slow, your thoughts to soften, and the gentle current of sleep to carry you away. There is nothing left to do now but surrender to the quiet stillness.